You have all got this card in your pews, and I'm not going to talk about the other side of it, although I encourage you to do something with it if you haven't. But it says rooted in community and has Vern Ellis's beautiful drawing there. And this resonated so much with me as the theme of this year's stewardship. This is perhaps because I've reached the stage where I'm marveling at the offspring of my offspring, and I'm cherishing them, but as well, I'm cherishing my siblings and friends while I can, and thinking much more often of those no longer here. Today, I get to give a shout out to some of those women who are no longer here, but gradually bound me to this community from when I first came here in my late 20s, newly married and eager to put down roots after college years, after post-college years of moving from one apartment and town or city to another. These women started and nurtured my roots here. It happened, though, in an almost imperceptible and an even homely way, through committees. We were a much smaller congregation then, and just about every activity was organized and run by a committee. And Sylvia Tattersall, our church secretary, and Sue Creed's mother, made sure every meeting was well attended by making reminder phone calls every evening so that each member knew there was a meeting coming up. Don't worry, Diane, I'm not expecting that. For me, committee work began with Cottie Fraser, mother of Chris Fraser. Cottie was a force of nature. She took me in hand literally after a service one day to Roxy Collation, another force of nature, to make sure I signed up to work on the Fall Harvest Fair. I was eased in by being allowed to skip most of the meetings and just show up the day of the fair. Somehow, though, during the hours of selling, buying at other groups' areas, cleaning up, and speculating on income at the end of the day, I had been identified as a clear recruit. I worked in Boston all day, so the one standing committee that successfully drew me in first was music. I knew nothing at all about classical music, but Forrest, my husband, did. And after being wowed by my first experience with one of the concerts organized by Gene Wilson, I became an eager fan, and I agreed to provide the food and beverage for a post-concert reception. Next thing I knew, I was chairing the music committee, despite repeated protests of ignorance. I was told that didn't matter, they just needed an organizer. Well, I soon learned that a group of strong-minded, talented musicians like Gene Wilson, Barbara Owen, and Florence Pearson just needed a tactful referee. I adored and feared each of them in a variety of ways and felt so lucky for the musical insights they shared with me, the company, the parties they had, introducing me to all these wonderful people, and including, of course, my piano lessons with Gene Wilson. It was the hospitality committee, though, that I thrived in. The committee charge was primarily to get hosts for weekly coffee hour, but we also organized the May breakfast and at least one potluck supper before the annual meeting, although there were often other potluck suppers. We cleaned the kitchen, we did all sorts of things. I learned from Carrie Plummer, Joan Smart, Roxy Collation, again, Hope Wood, Maxine Steves, Beth Colley, Ruth Fletcher, and later Bea Plummer, Ann Cecil, that's Sarah's mother, and Marge Babcock. How much fun it could be to work together as a team and in the kitchen to entertain the rest of the community. All were of my mother's generation, and yet they made me feel like one of the gang. I loved learning their recipes for fun, for dealing with aches and pains, including husbands and kids who were my age. As much as I did their recipes for food, and the formulas I learned for table settings, for tea service, doing a formal tea service. They also were strong-minded and talented, but they had come together, I realized, because they enjoyed the process of the tasks. Differences were acknowledged, laughed about, even relished. There could always be 2 different versions of cucumber sandwiches, for instance. In fact, they enjoyed the process so much that they did a lot of other things, and they eventually lured me into several of them. The special one for me was joining them for the rummage sale, once my work schedule allowed me to have an afternoon off. I came back from the first one with nearly a whole new wardrobe. One after another, they would approach me with something and say, "I don't need any more of these, but this would look so great on you." I felt like a princess. I was just being dressed all day long. Sadly, I had to say goodbye to each one in turn. Even in that way, I was prepped by them. The Women's Alliance used to host a reception after each church member's memorial service. I never joined the Alliance, but I started helping them because they couldn't carry things up and down stairs or reach the pans at the top anymore. Eventually, unfortunately, I was able to thank them in return by providing for some of them, receptions for some of their families. These are the women who tilled the soil so that my FRS roots could grow. Thank you.